Okay, so it is 12:01, so I'll get started. I think most people are here, but a few people might arrive a little bit later as well. So my name is Malin Lay, and I'm going to be doing the session today on EndNote Advanced. And I know when you registered, the title was, I think, Advanced EndNote in the Health Sciences. But the content today is really applicable to all disciplines. So don't worry if you are not from health. If you're still just kind of trying to figure out how to learn the advanced features of EndNote, today's session will be helpful to you. And again, content for today's session is at that bit.ly link, which is also listed in the chat box. Okay, so that's me again, wearing what looks like actually a very similar outfit, but is not the same outfit as in this picture today. Oh, and I will mention, so my name's Malin, but one of the other health sciences librarians, Janet, is monitoring the chat and questions today. So I know that a lot of EndNote questions can come up and they're very specific to, usually they're very kind of specific questions to what's going on with your EndNote, but please feel free to send your questions to chat, or pardon me, to the question box. And Janet will attempt to answer them. And if they're applicable to the broader group, she'll let me know, and then I should maybe let everybody know. So we will be recording this session, and we'll be likely posting the recording to our YouTube page, but no personal information that you put in is ever captured in that. If any of you are having technical issues, again, send a message, and Janet will hopefully be able to walk you through it. Okay, so I wanted to get a sense of where everyone is coming from. So I thought we could just do a quick poll. So if you go to menti.com and then enter in this code, 62 63 45 9, I'm also putting that in the code, and I will just toggle over to that. Okay. Oh, hold on, I just have to change what I am sharing because it's not sharing that. There we go. Okay, you should see now my misspelled EndNote, but advanced, and I'll just wanted to go through. Okay, and again, the code is up at the top in case you didn't catch it right at the beginning. Okay, I'm not sure if it's showing me. Hopefully, oh, there we go. Okay, I wanted to make sure it was showing some responses. And we did have an EndNote Basics class last week, so that might have been the class that you went to as well. I'll just give a second more in case some of the other people in the session wanted to just kind of let me know if they've had any training sessions in the past. Because this is an advanced session, so I'm not going to be going kind of over the basics of, say what EndNote looks like or what it is or how to import. We're going to be dealing with different stuff. Okay, so I'll move on. So some of you have attended trainings and sessions in the past, which is great. Okay. So how familiar are you with EndNote? And again, just trying to I know I don't have a lot of options here, but haven't downloaded it. Pretty advanced user. We got one answer there, but want to learn more. And can do, say, basic functions like importing. Okay, great. Okay, and I wanted to get a sense of, again, people's background, so I know kind of maybe how they might be using EndNote. Okay, so our responders are both graduate students. Oh, okay, great, and a faculty member. Okay, and that pretty much kind of is what we tend to see is more graduate students and faculty. Undergrads are usually served quite well by some of the free programs. And then I just wanted to get maybe if you have, one suggestion for something you'd like to learn in this session, and hopefully I've already got it planned to cover it. And if not, I will make sure to include something at the end to address it. Okay, I'll just wait 5 more seconds just to see if somebody might put something in here, and if not, I'll move on to the main content. Okay, connections to Word, troubleshooting, okay. Organizing multiple imports to weed out duplicates. We'll talk a little bit about deduplication for sure, and connections and troubleshooting. And maybe I'll just mention this now, the troubleshooting part. So just so people know. So I would say if you're having the trouble with EndNote, this is usually my strategy. Is one, there are tons of resources for EndNote troubleshooting online. So often I will just put in the problem that I might be having and putting it in EndNote, and they've got lots of forums. I would always suggest contacting your librarian. So especially at the health sciences, a lot of us are very familiar with EndNote and use it in our day-to-day work. So we can often walk you through something. And then the third option, and this happens sometimes when there are just issues that we can't figure out, is to contact EndNote directly. EndNote is a program that you have paid for, so they do have very good customer support because it is a paid product. I have found them very responsive and often able to walk me through problems or to help people who I'm trying to help that I wasn't able to figure out the solution. So don't be afraid of contacting your librarian or reaching out to EndNote directly, especially if it's kind of like a technical thing that you think something isn't talking properly between, say, EndNote and Word, and that kind of thing. But if you have a specific problem that you're having with the connections, feel free to put it into the chat, and we might, or the question box, pardon me, we might be able to figure it out there. Okay. And I think I have this somewhere else, so don't feel you have to answer this. I think I brought this in from another presentation. Okay, thanks. So just make sure the right thing is showing. Okay, so here is the outline. So these were the advanced features that I was going to cover today. PDF annotations, how to share your library, deduping, how to do global edits, so to make big changes to many references at once, how to set up a smart library, what traveling libraries are, if you've never heard that term before, and how to use EndNote's Manuscript Matcher feature, which is how to suggest journals for you based on kind of key parts of a paper that you may have written using EndNote. Okay, so I have a few tips before we get in there, and I know I kind of just said this one as well for troubleshooting, but if you have trouble remembering a step that I've gone through in this presentation, you know, a couple days from now, a week from now, but you know kind of it exists, is again to Google EndNote and the function. So, you know, how do I import this or how do I do that? Again, there are just so many step-by-step guides online. So once you kind of know that something exists, for example, the traveling library, once you have finished the end of this session, it's much easier to kind of recreate those steps with a quick Google search. If you want more information, we do have a very good citation management LibGuide that I've linked to here. So it talks about EndNote. It has some detailed instructions. It talks about EndNote Web, which I'm only going to talk about a little bit here. And it talks about some of the other citation programs that we support here at the library as well. And if you missed the EndNote Basics session last week and you want to go back and see it, the recording is here on our YouTube library page. Okay, and just an FYI, in case some of you haven't bought it and maybe are about to buy it very soon, EndNote just came out with EndNote 20 yesterday. And so we haven't had a chance to take a look at it, what it looks like, if it's how different it is from what we're going to be talking about today, which is my demonstration is based on X9, but really it will apply to most of the versions. Most people aren't using anything much before, say, X7. So this session only really refers to X8 and X9 and not EndNote 20. The other thing I didn't put information here too is that, so I'm using a Mac and my screen grabs are also from a Mac. There are slight differences between a Mac and a PC for the desktop versions of EndNote and where you find things. Like especially in kind of the top toolbars. So let me know if you're having trouble finding something, if you happen to be on a PC and you can't find it, even though I'm talking about it on a Mac. Okay, so if you haven't done so already, there is the link to the slides today, as well as the content that we're going to be using today, specifically a test library, which is in an ENLX format, which is a compressed library. I don't know if you've ever done that in EndNote before, but it allows you to merge the EndNote library part and the data folder together into kind of one file that you can easily send. So this is mine in Google Drive, as well as a document that we'll be using later when we talk about traveling libraries. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is PDF annotations. So you know from the basic sessions that you might have attended and other EndNote uses or training that you might have had, that you can attach PDFs to your references within EndNote. But what you might not know is all the things that you can do to the PDF that is attached. So you can write text, you can do highlighting, you can do all of these different features. And once you have made, say, any annotations or any notes on the PDF, they then become searchable when you do, they become searchable from the main EndNote library search box. So if you're making kind of a consistent note to yourself about a PDF, like this is a really great argument, I want to use it in the abstract or something like that, you can then, and maybe you would come up with a more distinctive keyword, but you could then go and search it in the search box itself. So I do have some screen grabs, and then I'm also going to show you what it looks like kind of in action. But for the PDF annotation, so if you have opened up that test library, you will see that there are some that have the little, I don't know, hopefully you can see that well enough, that have that little paperclip icon to the left. And that shows that there is a PDF attached. And then you can see, this is just a screen grab of a PDF that is contained within my EndNote library, are all the different kind of features that I can do to it to mark it up. So I'm going to show that kind of in action. Let me open up my EndNote library again. Okay, so here is my EndNote library. This is the same library that you should all have, just test library. And I'm going to go to this Nicholas article here. I'm going to slide over a little bit just to make it a little bit clearer for everybody. And so in case you didn't remember from a basic session, but you can always modify how your content is displayed in EndNote. Again, this is one of the things that's in a slightly different place between a Mac and a PC. For the Mac, it's right up here, and look around there for the PC as well, but you can change what you want to show. So right now I have it right split, which means I have this information, like the actual reference information, and then I have my PDF. But I can always change it to say, just show me the PDF if I wanted that even bigger. But what I'm going to do, because I want to kind of have it all, is I'm going to slide this over a little bit. And here's my PDF right here. So again, I can make it bigger. Let me make this say 100%. And then you can see that I can slide this over even further. Of course, it's super finicky just to pull those. There we go. Okay, so here's my PDF. It's big enough for me to read on my desktop. And then right here where you see this little kind of icon of a pen writing on a paper, if you click on that, you get all of these different options for how to edit your PDF and how to annotate it. So you can see, you can draw squares around it, which is what I did for that big blue square. You can highlight your text. So say I want to click on highlight, and I can choose my highlighter color. So let me go back to highlighter. Now this time I want to highlight in orange, and I can highlight, say, I want to highlight all my authors so that I don't forget for whatever reason. I can go ahead and do that. I can add in a text box. Oh, actually, you know what? I think that's the strike through one. Sometimes you have to kind of hover over it to make it. There we go. Yeah, okay. So sorry, the one with the little T and the line is the strike through, I forgot. And then this one right here with the little comment box is where you can add a sticky note. So say what you could do is you could go through and say, okay, I want to add a comment here in my methods to come back to. And then if you double click on it, you can write a note to yourself. So this is also helpful if you are working with a group of people on something, and you could say, hey, Janet, check out these methods. Should we copy this, for example? Or any kind of notes that you might make when you are annotating a PDF. You can do that all there, and you can see that you have the larger kind of text here as well, but it's just a small little icon right there. And it will save it. And then anytime you try and click out of it, it might actually remind you to save it. Yeah, save. And so now when I come back to it later, it will all be there waiting for me again. So again, it's just really, as we're moving, I know a lot of people used to always have print PDFs and they would mark it up in paper. And again, that works really well for a lot of people, but doesn't necessarily work as well now, especially, I certainly don't have a printer at home anymore. So it's just a nice way to make notes for yourself when you're reading the PDFs for things that you might want to come back to or things that you might want to consider. Okay, so I'm just going to pause and I'll just see if anyone has questions about PDF annotations before I go to the next part. Okay, that was PDF annotations. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how to share libraries. So the ability to share libraries is pretty new to EndNote. EndNote its strength has always been in the desktop version, and other products like say Mendeley or Zotero are really good at the web portion. So EndNote kind of came up with this ability to share libraries as a way to kind of encourage and support collaboration on research and on projects without necessarily making their web version that great. So it is only available for X8 up, so X8, X9, and 9 now. I'm assuming EndNote 20. And I believe with X8, you can share with up to 10 colleagues. And when you are in X9, you can share with up to 100 colleagues. And I'll show you how to do it. But I will, a few things to note is that there are different levels of access. So if you are, say, a faculty member and you're working with a student and you want that student to have access to your EndNote library to, say, put in citations, but you don't want them to be able to add citations or change the citations, you can give them just a basic level of access. Or if you are a full collaborator with somebody else, you can give them full kind of read, write, edit privileges. And what will happen is once you invite somebody to share your library, that person will get an email invite, and then they will have to just kind of click to agree. And the other thing is that you have to have created an EndNote web account in order to share your library and in order to access a shared library. It's just the login process that you have to do to make that function work. And another thing to note is that you yourself can only share one library at a time, but you can be a sharee on multiple libraries at once. So you can have your research project that you share out to your colleagues, but then you can access the shared libraries of other people all at once. So it's just a different kind of way to do sharing. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here is your EndNote library. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller now. And I wish there was a way to kind of increase the size of EndNote, because I know it can be kind of small on your screen, but there are two different places that you can share. So here where you see this little person and a plus sign, if I click that, a screen should hopefully come up. Okay, and it might come up if because I'm already logged in, but if you were not logged into your EndNote web account, it would prompt you to A, log in, or B, to create an account, and those accounts are completely free. And then what you can do is you can invite people to access a library. And again, so right now I could put in Janet's, say, email, And then I can change, again, she can have read and write, or she can just have read only privileges. And I could say, you know, hey, come check out my library, and then invite her. So, and you can see here, like yesterday, I invited myself at my different email address, and I gave myself read write privileges to share this library. And what you can see here is once that person has accepted, the status will change to accepted, but you can also see that it will say pending. So if I am worried, okay, you know, Janet hasn't gotten back to me, I can always remind them. And at any point, I can also remove them. So if, you know, this person is no longer a collaborator or is no longer one of your students, you don't want them having access to your library anymore, you can remove their name at any time. And then you can close. And so what they'll get now is, again, they will get an email inviting them to share this library, and then they'll be able to access these references as well. It can be really helpful when you're working on a project together, if you're writing a paper together, to be able to access the same set of citations, especially at the writing stage, I would say. And the other way you can share, I did this shortcut, but you can also go to File and Share right here, and it will take you to the same place. So if you're on a PC, look around for a little person with a plus sign, or to go File and Share, and you should be able to do it there. And I think I have a little screen grab of what that looks like as well. Okay, yeah, so here I have, I'm just showing what I just showed you, and this is what it looks like, the actual email that you get in terms of sharing a library. You have to kind of click that link, and you have to have created an EndNote web account. And of course, you do need, you can ask, I'm pretty sure you can access the library through EndNote web, but they're also, I mean, it obviously works better if you have a desktop version of EndNote to use for this function as well. Okay, any questions about sharing a library kind of before I move on? I'll just pause for a second. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is deduplication. So deduplication is basically what we also just shorthanded to calling deduping. It basically happens if you are, say, doing a big review or any kind of lit review that requires you to look in multiple databases at once for the same topic, and then you're downloading kind of big sets of references. They don't even have to be that big. You know, you're downloading 10 here from, say, like PubMed, 15 from Web of Science, 20 from Scopus. If they're on the same topic, odds are you're going to have duplicates. The other way that it can happen is just if you, the kind of researcher that you are, if you just kind of tend to collect references that look interesting over time, odds are you're going to get a few duplicates in there as well. So EndNote has very basic deduping features for you to use, and they also have very advanced deduplication. And I would say this is one of the features that makes it stand out from some of the free resources, like say Mendeley or Zotero. EndNote's basic deduping is, again, probably equivalent to, say, Mendeley's basic deduping feature, but their advanced deduping is kind of miles better than the other products. So for the basic and advanced, the way that you start is by clicking on the references and the find duplicates button. And if you just click that, what it's going to use are the EndNote default settings for finding duplicates. And I'll show you what that looks like. But then what you can do is you can alter those settings under preferences to basically to kind of change where EndNote is looking for similarities between references. Because, and I'll kind of show you what this looks like, but it's not always really clear cut. So there is a lot of advice for how to do deduplication online. So I've linked out to kind of a guide for doing basic deduping, as well as how to do advanced deduplication. And this is a link out to kind of a very standard methodology that health sciences librarians use when we're doing, say, systematic reviews, and we're having to dedupe thousands of references, or if you're doing a scoping review, potentially tens of thousands. It is not, again, always really easy to do, and it does take time, but following kind of a clear-cut process makes it a lot more straightforward, and then you can always put that, say, in your methods part of your paper that you followed this methodology to do your deduplication. So those are linked to there as well. And I will note, oh, I think it was missing, did I miss the slide? Hold on, let me just go back for 1 second. No, okay. Sorry, I'm teaching twice this week and I couldn't remember which I had added this extra slide in. Is that we are having, starting next week, we're having a 6-part series on systematic reviews. And one of the sessions, there is a whole hour devoted to deduplication. So if this is something that is of interest to you, I would check that out and see about registering, and I'll show you, I can show you where the link for that is, but it's basically if you found this session, that session will be listed in the same place as well on our library page and training. Okay. So this is just a picture of how the settings are for deduplication, but it's always easier to kind of see it in action. Okay, so the way I set up the EndNote library that if you're following along, you should hopefully be able to do this as well, is that it's going to have different kinds of duplicates. So, and some of them, again, this is a pretty small library, so some of them it's very clear to see that there are duplicates, but sometimes it can be a lot harder to tell. So again, for the default dedupe, basically you go to references and say find duplicates. And what will come up, this is kind of like the side-by-side screen that will show you how many duplicates you have and what the differences are between them. So if you want to see, well, how are they the same and how are they different? So for example, this one, the journals are different. So this one says the Canadian Journal of Dietetic Practice and Research, et cetera, et cetera. And then this one just says the Canadian Journal of Dietetic Practice and Research. But everything else, authors, year, title, et cetera, are the same. Scroll down, everything else is the same. So this is a true duplicate. It just has a different title. You're welcome to use this. If you have a small library, this is totally manageable as a way you can just say, okay, well, I want to keep this one. But if you have thousands of references, this is much too time consuming to do. So what I tend to do is hit cancel. And I go to the second part of the duplication screen. So what they will show you here on this is they will show you your duplicates kind of one after another, and then you can compare them right here in this screen, and you can delete multiple ones at once. So for example, this one I can see, okay, these have the exact same title, they have the same author, they have the same year. If I scroll over, I could look at page numbers. Page numbers are often a very good way to locate duplicates as well, same journal, etc. And you can see what happened here is because I clicked kind of off of the screen, so my selected references kind of disappeared on me. I can always just go back and click find duplicates again, and it'll re-select them for me. And then what you can do from here is you can just press the delete button, and it will put them into the trash for you. And if you haven't used EndNote trash a lot, nothing gets deleted from your trash. It sits there. It doesn't empty out when you close EndNote down. So if you have accidentally deleted something, don't worry. They will just be here in trash, and you can always put them back into your kind of complete references. Okay, so that is a very simple dedupe. There are ways to do kind of more advanced ones. So if I go to EndNote X9 here and then preferences, I believe on a PC it's file and preferences, maybe options. So click on preferences. And then what you'll see, oh, I have to move it over to the screen, is this is where you can set kind of advanced features for EndNote. So one of the options here is duplicates. So if you click on duplicates, you will see what kind of fields it is looking for kind of true matches. So it's basically to be considered a duplicate, it has to have the same authors, the same year, the same title, and it has to be the same reference type. So that means it has to be categorized as, say, a journal article. So I often don't like this one because references will often come in not categorized. but you can change it. So if you want to be even more restrictive, you can say, well, it also has to have the same journal, and it has to have the same volume and the same issue list. That just makes it more restrictive. You will find kind of fewer duplicates. But what you basically do for your deduplication is you start out stricter, get rid of those ones because those will all be true duplicates. If a reference matches all of these things, it's a true duplicate. But as you kind of go through the process, you want to loosen up a little bit, and that's when you would start using kind of your own judgment. So here, I might say, okay, I want it to have the same title and the same year. So now I'm only going down to kind of 2 fields that I'm requiring it to be the same. And then I'm going to go save, and this screen will just kind of stay up. And now I will go and do the find duplicates again. Okay, so I'm just going to cancel out of this so you can see. So here, now it has found 2 more references that it says, okay, could potentially be duplicates. So looking at these titles and page numbers, for example, and years, they look very similar. So you might say, well, why didn't it find them at first? And if you expand here, if you look at the author name, so here you can see you have an author who has a last name with kind of multiple, basically multiple words in their last name. So it's not just Smith, right? And so databases will kind of capture that in different ways. So sometimes they might just capture the Zavala and then make AG the first names, and other times they will capture the Golek, Des, Zavala, and just the A. So because these are different ways that databases have captured the name, they aren't found as duplicates with kind of the default setting of EndNote. And here in this one, for the top one, you can see that this first one has way more authors. So there are multiple authors in this one. So you might wonder, well, why are there more options, or pardon me, why are there more authors in that one? So you might go and take a look. But to me, the fact that it has the same page numbers, the same year, the same title, and mostly the same authors, I would probably consider that a true duplicate and delete it. So if you're doing deduplication, use that kind of, and you're doing it for, say, a big review, use that link to kind of walk you through it, because what they do in that link is they walk you through step by step what pieces to include here and what not. So probably the least restrictive one is just to say, I want it to only have to match on title. And then what you would do is, again, go back to your main references and go find duplicates. So this one you are more likely to have, and I can't remember if I've set it up, this one you're more likely to have a lot more false kind of duplicates. So especially if you have, say, very generic titles. So if you had something like just, you know, yoga for back pain, if that was the title of your article, you're probably going to have lots of articles that are just called yoga for back pain. So the longer your title and more specific it gets, the less likely that there's going to be other journal articles that have the exact same title, but very basic titles. There could be many articles with the same name. So there's a lot more that could be said on duplicates, or deduplications, which is why we spend kind of a whole hour on that in another class. But I thought I'd just give you kind of the basics of it. And then I'll just pause and see if there's any questions about deduping. And then I'll move on.
No questions in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Janet. Okay, so the next thing is global editing. So this is basically, I mean, you can edit any reference in EndNote at any time very easily. But if you want to make massive edits to multiple references at the same time, this can be very helpful as well. So that's helpful if you are, say, making notes to yourself, or if you are changing, say, database names, common misspellings, you're cleaning something up, or if one set of information, for example, the PubMed identification, the PMID, is showing up in the wrong kind of field all the time and you want to fix it. So again, EndNote gives you lots of options for how to do that, but where you would go is Tools, and then this Change, Move, Copy fields, and that's this is the display screen that will appear. So again, I'll show you what that looks like. Feel free to follow along if you have the library open. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to go Command or Control A to select all of them. So you have to do this if you're wanting to make changes to all of them. But you can also go through and select just the ones that you want, or you can make groups and select just those ones. And then go to Tools, and then Change, Move, Copy Fields. So one thing that I like to do, I do a lot of systematic reviews, and it's important to keep track of which databases you have downloaded them from. And sometimes that information comes in, but often it doesn't. So frequently, I will go from this long list. So these are all the different fields that kind of appear, these ones right here. I will go all the way down to name of database. And then I'm going to put in, okay, I got them all from Medline. And then you can indicate here where you want them to make that change. So you can say, okay, if there happens to be any other text, I want it to go afterwards. If you want it to replace, you can select that. So you can see, again, lots of different options for what goes in there. And then you can go, okay. And it's going to confirm, it's going to say, okay, you have 32 references, you're replacing this with that. Do you want to go ahead? Because you can't just hit undo or Command X or Control X if you make a mistake. It's a permanent change unless you go in and kind of do that whole process again and take that out. But if you had content in some of those fields that you have replaced, that content is gone forever. So always make sure that you are doing what you actually intended to do, and then go, okay. I'm just going to scroll over here. And sometimes, again, if you have a really big library, this process can take a couple seconds, a minute. I'm going to scroll over, and I should have shown you this maybe beforehand. But right here where it says name of database, now it shows Medline in all of that. The other thing you can do all together is you can move fields. So if I go to Tools, Change, Move, Copy Fields, and then here, when it says Move, Copy Fields, so again, say you had something consistently in the wrong field, and again, when I'm talking about fields, I mean like year or title or abstract, you can select them here. So I could say, okay, whatever is appearing constantly in the URL, I want it to go to the DOI. And then again, I have those options to say where I want it to go. Do I want it to replace, etc. And then I can go, okay. So I actually didn't check ahead of time if that's helpful or not for this one, but lots of flexibility in moving kind of references around and editing things all together. Okay. So that was global editing. The next thing I'll talk about is smart groups. So I think you should all hopefully be familiar with creating groups and subgroups, which are the equivalent of, say, folders and subfolders, as a way to organize your references in EndNote. But that is something that you have to do manually. So you have to create a folder, and then you have to drag and drop your references into that folder, which again can be very helpful. But sometimes you may want to create smart groups, which is where basically you set up rules, and then EndNote will place articles, or pardon me, references into those groups if it meets those specific rule kind of specifications, or it meets the criteria. So one example that I put here is if you want to group all the papers by the same author in one folder. So you could say, well, that's really easy to do. I would just sort it by author and, I just dump all the ones that where, the first author is by that paper in a folder. But what happens if the author isn't the first author, but, so they don't appear automatically, but you still want to capture that they have written those papers. So this is a way to kind of do that. So it is going to be under the groups function, and then create smart group. It also happens if you right click over groups, I believe. I'll have to double check. And then what's going to happen is this kind of screen is going to pop up, which allows you to set the rules for why an article should or should not be put into this specific smart group. So it's kind of like if you've ever created rules for your email as well, because you want them to go into specific folders. Oops. There we go. Okay. So here you can see I meant to delete this, but it's still here. But this is one of the smart groups that I created yesterday to capture articles written by this one author, Felicia Wood. So if you, this is just me right-clicking, so you can create a smart group like that. Right-click and then create smart group, or you can go to groups and create smart group. And it will bring up these rules. So you can see you can add, I don't even know how many, a lot of different rules. But again, when you click on this link or this button right here, it's going to show you all the different fields that you have available to you. So you could say, okay, I want every article that is published in 2018 to automatically go into this folder. Or, you know, it needs to have this word in the abstract. So if you are, say, looking for a specific kind of text that has a name, so like, you know, you could put that in there in the abstract, and then it will automatically go into that folder for you. So what I had done for this one is just author, and then I could just say, I'm going to recreate the one that I already did. So I wanted to find all the articles by Felicia Wood. There we go, by Felicia Wood. And then I would put in the criteria. So author, and it has to contain, and then you type it in here. So I put in Wood. And then I know that I want to make sure, because Wood is, well, maybe it, you know, could be a common last name. So I want to make sure that it includes their first name. So I could, you know, go in and I'm familiar enough with this author. I know that her name is Felicia. I'm probably misspelling Felicia though for this example. And I also know that she is commonly known by FG. So those are her like her primary initials. And then I would go create. Okay, so here it just created a duplicate of the group I had already created. And you can see in this example, so it's capturing an FG, excuse me, as well as capturing, right, when she's written it as Felicia G. So she doesn't have to be, and in this case right here, this one, I don't know if you guys can see this, she is not even showing up. She's not the first author. She's way back here at the end, but it's still capturing her. So to make sure that you are finding all of the work that she has published. So smart groups, again, they take a little bit of time to create them, but they can really save you a lot of time depending on how you're doing your research and how you want things kind of categorized. Okay, that was smart groups. The next thing is traveling libraries. So traveling libraries may not be as well used anymore since EndNote created the feature that allows you to share libraries, but I still find them pretty helpful. And so what they are is when you are creating a document in Word, Microsoft Word, and you are linking it to EndNote to put into your citations, in the background of that paper, it is capturing, I don't know if it's really metadata, but it's capturing kind of coding in the background for all of those references. So then if you sent it to somebody else, they could, even though the references, even though they don't have your EndNote library, they can download those references so that they can make changes to the document using the same EndNote library. So it seems kind of confusing, so I'll show you what I mean by that. But you have to open up Word. So let me open up Word and open up the library that I wanted to. So this is that test library page. They're, pardon me, traveling library paper. And I'm going to move it. Here we go. Okay, so this is just, say, a document that you had been writing, and you have, again, since you have downloaded EndNote desktop, you have it in your Microsoft Word toolkit, or pardon me, toolbar here, EndNote X9. So from the basic class, you would have gotten familiar with how you put in the references. So now there are references in this paper. So you want to send it to a colleague, or you want to send it to an advisor, you want to send it to somebody, and you want them to be able to add in their own references. So say, again, you've been collaborating with somebody and you wrote the methods and it's their turn to write the results. So if you go to, and then you've sent this to them. So if they go to Tools and say Export Traveling Library, they are given the option, they can add it to an existing EndNote library, or they can create a new EndNote library. So I'm going to say I want a new one, and then I'm going to go OK, and I'll just call it Test Travel Library November, and save it to my desktop. And so I'll just give it a second. There it is. Oops, and it disappeared on me. Here it is. Okay, so from my paper, even though the references are kind of embedded in there, I now can download the references here. Here they all are. I can then continue writing in this paper and add those references again, or I can add my new references into here, say the references that I would use to write up the results section. And then when I'm citing in that Word document, I'm able to add them all in. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my Word document. Too many windows open. I think it's disappeared on me. Oh, here it is. Hold on. So I could go in and now add new references again. So it's just to aid in collaboration, and it's helpful to know that it's there in the background should you need it. Okay, and again, it's under Tools and then Export Traveling Library. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is Manuscript Matcher. So what this does is it's a feature of EndNote and kind of created by their larger parent company, Clarivate. And what it does is using the title, the abstract, and references, EndNote will make suggestions for where you should publish, and it links it to data on, say, high impact journals and their specific subject areas. Sometimes it may be really clear to you where you want to publish, but sometimes it can be very hard, especially if, say, your first choice has said, you know, okay, we don't want to accept, and you need to find an alternate publishing option. So I'll show you what that looks like as well. Okay, so it's here. Again, it's from within Word. You can also access it online, but I find it easier just to do it from here. And then you go to Manuscript Matcher. And it's gonna, again, you're gonna need an EndNote web account, which is free. And then what you do is you start filling in information here. So I'm just gonna fill some information in here. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so here is the title of my paper. And I'm gonna cut and paste my abstract, which includes my objectives, my methods, my results, and obviously my conclusions. And because I did it straight from EndNote itself, it is already pulling those 10 citations to help create a better suggestion. And then if I go find journals, it will make suggestions for me. So here you can see, again, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so it has found 9 journals for me, and it indicates to me what their impact factor is. Often that is very important for people publishing, depending on where you are in your career. It will indicate whether the journal is open access. So that's what this orange kind of lock but open lock symbol means, is that this is an open access journal. It will tell you what the categories are that this journal is under. So say, for example, PLOS, neglected tropical diseases, is categorized under parasitology and tropical medicine. And then what you can just do is it will, if you decide on, say, this one, you can immediately go to submit and it'll start the process. So it links right out to that just to kind of streamline. So if you scroll down, you can see that many of the journals are related to, say, infectious diseases. The title of the journal, of the article, is about a specific virus, so this makes sense. And again, it gives you all this information, and you can help make the system better if you so choose by saying yes or no, this is a good journal, this is not a good journal, based on the topic. So just something you might not have been aware of. This specific journal, this specific article I think was published in the International Journal of Infectious Diseases. So again, right on kind of, it's not in this list, but it's a good, sorry. You can see that the suggestions that they're making are good and on topic. So they're not kind of selecting just their own journals, or, you know, they don't have a specific preference. Okay, so that was all that I had in terms of content. I wanted to leave a few minutes if people had questions. I linked out to where you can find your subject librarian to help you. If the EndNote question is too advanced for them, they will probably send you to one of the health librarians or one or two of the librarians at the Fort Garry campus who uses EndNote quite a lot. We really love to help, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. My one caveat is that EndNote questions are often too complex for you to use our virtual Ask Us chat system. We've been really promoting that during COVID, but it is probably not the best venue for EndNote questions. So just contact a librarian directly. And I'll just pause and see if there's any questions.